You're here, which means that you've found spirit crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Cosmic Energy Report. I'm Emily from Emily and Her Stars and Things That Make You Go Woo.
And I'm Andrea from Concrete and Crystals and Spirit Crown.
We're so excited to have you back. It has been, I would say whirlwind is maybe the nicest way to say how fast Gemini season went.
I agree. I say this every time where we're like, oh, we just did this, but I actually feel like I came out of a wormhole. I said that to Emily when we got on our call. Like, I actually felt like it's been half an hour since we recorded, but also a decade. I don't know what just happened there, but I feel like that quick Gemini energy really lived up to its potential this month.
Well, it was fascinating. We actually had a very windy month here as well. We had a couple of forest fires. It has been dry. I noticed all the vegetation is starting to get crisp, so it definitely feels like the winds of change, like we are definitely blowing out the old and we are ready to usher in summer. Gemini, it's that mutable energy that wants to walk the line between spring and summer, and there's this quickening pace and the feeling of ushering in something really big. And I think we, even just in talking ahead of time, we're mentioning that we feel Cancer season coming. Like there's this not impending doom. We don't mean it that way at all, but this feeling of something's coming. We're ready for the next chapter.
Absolutely. And I just was in BC for the Sacred Spirit Retreat and just got home yesterday. And even that transition to being in like a cool climate and then coming home and it's like, I don't know what it is, like 80 degrees and humid here. And I was like, okay, this is like, it did definitely fast forward the seasons for me because I was fully in spring mode until I landed and was like, this is definitely summer. Like it is here. And I guess I'm ready for it. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I do feel like there's some shifts happening with this Cancer season. I think last year we were feeling that energy of hope. The star came up. That was when we first started that journey with hope and the star. And it felt very like ethereal and like very intangible. But this year it feels like we're going to have like the tangible version of that, where we're going to be seeing maybe a little bit more earth return into the cards and into the energy.
We also had Jupiter jump into Gemini. So we had a year's worth of Jupiter energy in Taurus, which as a Taurus, I'm fond of that energy, but it is slow. And there was something that it almost felt like an anchor holding us back in some ways. And it definitely, I would say, feels like the rope has been cut, like we've pulled anchor, we're on our way, and things are changing. So I'm excited to see where Jupiter takes us. And we talked a lot in the Gaining Shadow episode that released just last week with the second half of the astrology for 2024. But we talked a lot about how Jupiter's influence in Gemini will be expanding knowledge, opinions, the amount of information available, where the sources are, all of those things. And I think we're just now starting to see some of that ramp up.
Definitely. I think that is already showing up. I've noticed even my own interest in like looking up headlines and getting caught back up because I've been away for a week and like I fully went offline. And so now I feel like I can see how much has happened in the last week, even in terms of headlines and things happening. And I think that's not going to slow down anytime now for the next while. And I think maybe it's what we need in order to usher in the new version of the world that we're all sort of leaning into.
And it's a really good point that it's important to take those time outs too. We talked about passing the flame on and letting someone else carry it for a while. And so it's okay. I'm encouraged to take that break. I'm really glad you got that chance to get away, because it's crazy when you step back in and you're like, how does this much happen in a week? And do I even want to absorb it all? So yeah, being kind to your nervous system is definitely part of it. And What's exciting as we start to talk about Cancer season, Cancer is the crab. We know that some of the roots of the crab or the lobster, the crayfish, being part of the connection to the sign comes from Greece. And it actually had something to do with breast cancer, which I'm always surprised that we have breast cancer awareness in October and not in Cancer season, as it should be. But it was the idea that sometimes a tumor can have that hard shell-like appearance. It would be red, it would be swollen, but that it was afflicting women and changing things for them. And there's a lot more to dive into in the history of that. But Cancer season in and of itself has much more to do with the idea that we are, I like to say we're the garlicky butterball of the astrology zodiac. Cancer has a hard shell, and so they're willing to put up a fight for those that they love. It takes a little bit of time to get under that shell, get to know them. I think this is true in some ways for all water signs. And they're absolutely on the inside, nothing but compassion, empathy, intuition, love, nurturing. There's all these things. But if you come after they're your family, they will cut you. Like, very simple. You're in or you're out. But it's also a feeling of bringing in anyone that feels that there's an emotional connection to. They become like family. And so celebrating during this time of the year, those that are in your close circle, whether that's family, whether that's friends, friends that feel like family, all of those things are part of this season, and celebrating them, taking that time during the summer to really sink into those relationships. Now, the other thing about Cancer is that there is a nostalgia. There's a sentimentality that comes with it, the way things were. Because traditionally Cancer as a sign isn't always excited to move forward. It's in some ways, yes, it's ushering in this change. It's a cardinal sign, but it's doing it a little begrudgingly. It wouldn't like necessarily to be thrust to the front of the room. It would prefer to come along slowly and get there as it wants to. But it is leaving that shell behind and finding new situations that feel like home, and then creating that cozy atmosphere until you're ready and brave enough to step out on the next journey. Now, one of the interesting things about this Cancer season coming up is that it is going to be bookended by 2 Capricorn full moons. So it's very rare. Yes, we can have 2 full moons in a month. Those are called, you get a blue moon if you have a second full moon in a month. But these are within the same zodiac sign. And this is what's not particularly common. So we have one on the very first day and we have one on the very last day. They bookend this entire season. And I think that is a big part of what we're going to feel. Capricorn is going to be a reference back to the things that we talked about at the beginning of the year, the goals we maybe set, the intentions we had. Revisiting them now is going to be an opportunity to see what feels good, what's working, and what's not.
Yeah, that really resonates. And I have both in my chart very strong. I'm a double Capricorn and I have a Cancer moon. And I think that I've particularly been telling Emily, I feel like a big change coming. I feel a lot of energy building up to this. And I think because, like I said, it feels like there's going to be more tangible changes. Before it was just like potential and like, how do I feel about this? And it was very intuitive last year. And I think that intuition is going to come into play this month. But I think that energy of home has been the central energy I've been pulling in, and a lot of the cards that I pulled, but also just the energy when I sit with Cancer season this year. And the phrase that came up at the end of Gemini season, if you remember for those few transition days that were on their own, was really spending time with people who feel like home. And I think that's sort of like the energy that we're going into, where it's like, what is home to me? Is it the people? Is it the place? Is it a combination? Is it the things? Like, I know with Cancers, like we tend to be a little bit of a pack rat because we have sentimental attachments to things. And so I think that's what I've been rethinking is like, what elements, even if you think of like air, water, earth, fire, like what elements come together that really make something feel like home to me. And it's really interesting that we have those 2 Capricorn full moons too, for me to really extra feel that energy and see what comes of it.
Well, and I think Capricorn is getting a glow up, I would like to call it. you guys have been under the gun with Pluto for way too long. So we're finally ushering out that energy. And here you are. Talk about a fresh start. You get 2 full moons to really come up with what is this new desire? What is this new direction? And let go of this past, oh gosh, it's been 18 years of dealing with Pluto really kicking your butt and bringing in some heavy transformation. So I'm excited to sing the praises for any Capricorn out there who has endured this, and particularly my dear friend. Yeah, soak up this exciting opportunity and bring in these fun new changes.
I will definitely be doing that because it's like we were saying, even with like taking a few days away and then coming back and realizing how much there is, like that's sort of the energy I feel is coming with this, where it's like when that energy is released, you're like, oh, I didn't realize how much I was holding. And I think that I kind of got the first taste of that at the beginning of the pandemic when like I was like every second of my time was scheduled. And then all of a sudden when I had nothing, it was like, I'm now so selective with my time. And I think it's like a new version of that. It's like, okay, now that I know I'm kind of doing the things I want to be doing and like I'm getting closer to it, now what do I do? What needs to be released? What am I bringing more of? So I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate to that right now with how things are shifting. And now I think is a good time then to transition into the cards, since the first few days are actually what my next card is about. I always deal into whether it's the beginning or the end of the month that's going to sort of get its own energy those last few days. That doesn't usually fall neatly at the end of a week. But this month, it's the beginning. And I think that's in part because the energy feels similar to how we left off in Gemini with that energy of like, I think it was the 3 of Cups and like really celebrating with the people that are close to you. And then the Gemini energy that's sort of sneaking into the 20th to the 22nd is the Page of Swords, which is actually the card that I feel the strongest resonates with Gemini energy because it's this woman like who's holding balloons that are light bulbs ahead of it. She's reading a book, she's walking a tightrope, she's just doing all the things and she's so absorbed in learning. And I think that's the point we're at now at the end of Gemini leading into Cancer is like we're taking that curiosity, we're taking that knowledge and all the things we're learning into Cancer season. And we may be bringing it back into our shell to like see what we're going to do with that. It feels like we've been mingling and maybe thrust into a lot of social things we weren't expecting and, you know, putting ourselves out there again, receiving a lot of information with that Jupiter in Gemini coming in. And now we're a little overwhelmed. So we're going to go back into our shell a little bit. We're going to just sort of maybe lean into the books and the movies and the solo ways of receiving information for a little bit. But I think what's going to come out of that is that intuitive nature of the water sign of Cancer is like now what we'll intuitively know what to do with that information or why we're drawn to a certain book or a certain topic or a certain modality. And I think that's the feeling that I used to get as a kid where like whatever books I picked to bring with me to the cottage for the summer if we went away or like those kinds of things are the energies I'm feeling. It's like that little cozy nook, even though it's summer, you know, I think it still has that cozy feeling to it. And I think too, there's this energy of being like a lifelong student where there's this understanding that like there's not like an end point to like now I've gathered all the knowledge and I can just be, you know, the peak version of who I think I'm going to be. It's like we're always going to have this cycle of changing. And I think that's where Cancer as the cardinal sign, like Emily was saying, it doesn't necessarily feel like it would be a cardinal sign because it does resist change. But I think it is sort of that shift where it's like we've been taking all this in and it's the person who's in charge of the home sort of being like, okay, now as a home, this is how we're going to structure things. And like, this is how we're going to have to do things to make this home be full of compassion and to be, you know, a safe place for everyone. And I think that feeling of safety comes up a lot with Cancer energy. And so this could be even financial planning. You might be like looking at your budget. You might be doing those things that you might typically do in like a Virgo or an Earth season. But because it's that cardinal sign, it's like setting yourself up for the second half of the year. That's the feeling I'm getting this year, especially. And that might be why that Gemini curiosity and the learning, and there might be like maybe you're looking at investments, maybe you're doing something different that you're not used to, but you're doing it at home. Like you're not necessarily telling people about it. But I think also this ties into, I believe in July in our Inviting Shadow episode, that's just coming to me now. I think the main message we had from that was sacred insights. And it was things you're going to keep private. And because of so much of Cancer season is in July, I think this ties into that. So it may be things that you don't really want to show your cards yet. Like maybe you're planning a move. Maybe you're planning a job change. Maybe you're making a big change with this cardinal energy, but it's something that's very close to you. So you may only be sharing that with those people who feel like home. That might be why we're asking people's opinion and having these like nonchalant conversations like, oh, how do you feel about this idea? How do you feel about that? But then people don't realize we're actually taking that in to then plan our next stages, because it does have a very tangible feeling, like I said, even though normally I feel like it's a feelings sort of month for me. This feels like we're making changes based on those feelings, based on the information we've gathered over the last 6 months. And I think it is in part due to that shift because of Cancer and Capricorn being on the polar, being the opposites, but sort of having that similar energy of family and home and stability. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how these few days, this little transition into Cancer season, really turns out for us.
It's interesting. You always surprise me when you bring through your inspiration, and I think we may even have some of the same phrases that are going to come up as we're moving through. So let's talk about the beginning of the season. Of course, June 20th is when the sun moves to her highest point, the Tropic of Cancer here in the Northern Hemisphere. The Southern Hemisphere, this is winter solstice, the sun furthest away from you. What's important, I think, to recognize during this period of time, and even to call it a pocket of time or a window, you were mentioning like bringing books to the cottage for the summer for this like window of time, this opportunity. We treat winter solstice like that pocket of time, the holidays. And to really remember to create that same pocket for yourself here in the summer, because it can be so easy. That Capricorn energy wants to just keep working, move through it. But we are meant to honor these periods of time in our lives. So I encourage you to really, and this came through so much in Inviting Shadow, was to enjoy the summer season. So I'm just going to leave that little nudge and reminder to take the opportunities as they come. So the next 4 family-oriented weeks are for nesting and guesting. If you find yourself looking for places to go, don't be surprised if nostalgia leads you back to sentimental childhood hangouts. During Cancer season, your most tender emotions could surface. So grab a hold of them and put them to work in journals, or get creative and express yourself in ways that make those feelings tangible. The Sun and foggy Neptune square off on the 20th, leaving it difficult to distinguish between facts and fiction. Family is great, but sometimes boundaries are better. Under this twice-a-year mashup, it's easy to get swept into the role of hero, so watch out for larger-than-life promises with no action plans. The moon will be in Sagittarius on the 20th, so this adds that fiery, outburst a little bit. The 21st, remember all those New Year's words and manifestation declaration. It's time for a midterm review. Tonight, the first rare doubleheader Capricorn full moon arrives to check out your progress and to help you correct course where needed. Why keep pushing if it isn't a fit? Revamp your strategy and pivot. But this full moon is going to square off with Neptune, revealing where you've likely been over-optimistic about your goals. Neptune reminds you that you have to follow the sparks of creativity, but don't let the goal behind it drag you into a bottomless pit if it's not the right fit. This is a great opportunity to get your crystals out and charge them. They're really great under a Capricorn moon. And on the 22nd, we have these waning ripples from the moon still kind of leaving you like maybe someone dumped water on you, on your only stick of Palo Santo even. Maybe that's just Mercury in the North Node squaring off today. Capricorn isn't here to be a party pooper. What's wrong with asking, why are we even having a party if no one truly knows? What good are goals if they're no longer aligned? It's time to evolve and step into a bigger and better version of yourself. Use some of this Cancer energy to call close friends and family to help you see things in new ways, or reflect back the great distances that you've already covered.
So aligned. I think that Capricorn energy is really going to show up strongly throughout the month. This next little chunk, this next week is June 23rd to the 29th for week 2. And I pulled the Temperance card. And so that's a number 14. It's a major arcana. And we have this later on in September, I believe, in the Inviting Shadow episode. But the other thing I told Emily is that I wrote very short notes because I just got back from the trip and I was like, I don't think I have the mental energy to fully feel into it and channel. But all of the things that resonated with what Emily said just came through now. So I'm going to do the same thing with temperance and we'll see how it goes. But one of the main energies I was feeling around this is coming back to center after Gemini season with all of that. So it's tying into that energy of like wanting to like, pull all your energy back after you've been doing extra socializing, especially people who are a water sign or a more sensitive soul. You may be feeling it more than others. Some people might be ready to keep going and keep connecting, but that just is because I think this card is showing us that you have to look at where you need more, where you need less. And maybe for some people, what you need right now is more connection, and that's great. And I think that's where knowing yourself, and that's why coming back to center, it doesn't always mean slowing down. Coming back to center is just being aware of who you are, what you're doing, and where your energy level is. Maybe you're coming back to center and you're like, I'm bored. I need more excitement. And that's fair too. And I think that's really important to keep in mind that a lot of times we hear the energy of like coming back to center, coming into balance. And it does make us think that that means you have to slow down, you have to stop what you're doing. But it's just the awareness piece that's coming really strong in the forward motion here is that we're balancing mind, body, and soul. And maybe what you need in your body is more movement. Maybe what you need in your soul is more connection. Maybe what you need in your mind is more stimulation. But it could also be a true Cancer season where you do need to pull back and you do need to pull your energy back into your shell. So it's just that mindfulness of knowing that, like, even if everyone else seems to be pulling back, it doesn't mean you have to do that if it feels uncomfortable, because sometimes it could feel uncomfortable to keep yourself small when you're not meant to. So that I think is one of the biggest lessons that temperance is showing us, because it's a 1 and a 4. So it's the 4 is the stability, but the 1 is always going to be a new beginning, bringing in new energy and also bringing in the self. So that creates change if you put those two things together. And like we said, I do feel some changes happening, but they have to happen internally first. We can't just jump ahead with the first idea that comes to mind. If we skip right from the mind to the doing, that's where we really don't sink into it and feel into how it would feel to make that change in ourselves. And that's what Cancer season is great for. It's intuitive. It's helping you feel what would feel like home. And that idea, that's where this is carrying through. Like I said, this feeling of home throughout the season. And this week in particular, it's what feels at home in your body. What places feel at home to you? What people feel like home to you? And like, what do you need more and less of? Maybe right now for me, I'm feeling I need less stuff, which as a Cancer who is an artist who collects things is very wild. Even Emily was like, wow, interesting, when I said that I was feeling like getting rid of things. But that's just how I'm feeling right now in this season. And I think if I just went by my mind, like, oh, it's Cancer season, usually I do this, and just jumped ahead to that, I think I'd be missing this opportunity to do something that could feel really cathartic. And with the full moon energy, I just feel like it's time to do that. And then the other energy around it is moderation. And, in this time period, we are still in doing social things. Here in Canada, we have Canada Day coming up, which is a long weekend. And there's the 4th of July coming up this month. And sometimes we can overindulge. And I think myself, even I was away for a week and I didn't drink any alcohol the whole week. And normally if I'm around people, I don't drink a lot, but I tend to be like, okay, well, I'm here. But even the night that we had the biggest like party gathering, I was drinking water the whole night and I was up just as long as everyone else because I knew in my body that it would feel better to feel hydrated, and I had the same energy level as everyone else. And I think that moderation and knowing like too much of a good thing can still be true, especially in a Cancer season when we're extra sensitive. And again, we may say things that we don't mean to say, or we may take things personally if we're not taking care of ourselves. And I think that coming back to center really is just about, reconnecting with yourself in all senses, just doing kind of the little mental check here and there and being like, am I feeling centered in my soul? Am I feeling centered in my body? Am I feeling centered in my mind? And then what feels out of place? What would nourish me right now? So I really feel good. I have a very, very positive heart opening energy with this week. I think it's going to open us up into making really good choices for the rest of the month.
It's for the most part, this week really only has 3 days of major influence. So after the full moon, we have about 3 days of just kind of quiet guys. So I encourage you to sit with what comes up during that full moon and take the time, because you're not going to have a lot of other external influences coming in. You'll, of course, have the moon moving into Aquarius, so that'll kind of pick up how fast your mind is going, what you're thinking about, those sorts of things. So yeah, the first real next piece that drops in is on the 26th. If you're willing to walk your talk, then you'll actually be unstoppable. Mindful Mercury gets comfortable with our favorite taskmaster Saturn today, helping you to come up with a plan to reach your long-term goals. When you follow through with the promises you make, not only to yourself, you become the embodied person of action that you're hoping to be. Small steps turn into miles, and before you know it, you've earned yourself some respect and authority in your field. This is the first day the moon dives into Pisces, so pay attention to any messages that may be delivered in dreams or conversations, downloads, divine downloads, connection to spirit. Take that opportunity to sit in meditation. On the 28th, we have Chiron in Aries making a really harsh square to Mercury in Cancer today. So any steps you take will go a long way toward healing how you feel about putting yourself out there and taking risks. If there's a hard conversation you've been avoid having with someone you love, nothing feeds the scary like the potential of the unknown. So in fact, what can you control? Think about where your words or your mindset are going and what direction do you actually want to lead them in. The moon will move into Aries early in the morning, and that's going to leave that extra influence of tension just under the surface. But with Mercury in Cancer, you're going to be able to have conversations from a more heart-centered place. You're just going to have the influence of Chiron in Aries and the moon in Aries that it has to happen now. So make sure that everyone who's participating is ready for that. On June 29th, we ask, is it fact or is it fiction? Because it really could be hard to distinguish between them for the next coming months. Taskmaster Saturn is going to begin its annual 4.5-month retrograde today, backspinning through Pisces until November 15th. If you've been swept up in a dreamlike state, Saturn could deliver the reality check needed. On the other hand, this is a really great time to polish your skills and gain experience. You don't need the entire plan before you start moving forward. After all, sometimes it's worth taking on a side quest if you gain invaluable experience. There are 2 sets of planets forming harmonious sextiles also today, which are allowing you to unlock hidden potentials. Mars and Venus will have you feeling confident and self-assertive, while Mercury and Uranus are going to help you to locate the hidden words you've been seeking. The moon will continue in Aries, so use the fire to sustain your momentum forward.
That feels really powerful, like that last day there leading into the next week, because for June 30th to July 6th, we have the 6 of Pentacles. And this is where I feel like this month is feeling very stabilizing in terms of like actually coming up with those plans, getting the words you need, the information you need, the conversations that need to happen. And it's very unusual for me to feel so much tangible energy, I think, for all of us in a Cancer season in terms of like moving forward. Usually we're off in la la land, just out at the beach and with our families, but this feels like a very serious energy to it. And with the 6 of Pentacles, one of the main energies is balancing between giving and receiving. And that does feel very true to Cancer energy, where sometimes like the overgiving and the people pleasing can come up. But in terms of the Pentacles, I think this is also telling us like we're going to be spending this week making our plans, revisiting things, and seeing what we want to move forward with. And the self-doubt can really creep in, and the, scarcity and the fears around like, oh, what if I don't have enough? That safety energy of the Cancer season. And so the 6 of Pentacles is trying to tell you that like if you have unexpected expenses or you have to put a bit of money out to do something you want to do, it'll come back to you. There's that flow of abundance that we often forget about as an energy. Like if you look back at times when that has happened to you, where you had an unexpected car expense and then the next month you get a bonus, like the universe has ways of supporting you if it's something that's really feeling truly aligned. And that's why I think that Temperance card came in, just to help us actually feel into our bodies, to get reacquainted with it, what it feels like when something feels right and what it feels like if something feels like it's not aligned anymore. And so taking that wisdom into this week with the 6 of Pentacles, the 6 is also balance and harmony, and also has ties to family as well. And so there is safety in making a plan to move forward. Like that cardinal energy is still there. You are still in a cardinal season of like setting up the plan for the family. And even if you're on your own, you're planning for your own household. Like there is this energy of stepping back and looking at the bigger plan and then moving forward in a way that feels like you're not taking a giant leap out of nowhere. And so there is that balance of giving and receiving and saying, if I do this, I may get this, and sort of feeling into the possibility for yourself. But what we're really being pushed into here is a trust. And I think trust can be a little tricky for cancers. And I think that energy is kind of playing out for a lot of us, especially over the last few years and the transitions we've all navigated and maybe things that didn't go as planned. But the one phrase that really stuck out from what Emily was just saying was the fact that like sometimes the side quests actually give us wisdom. And so sometimes you do have to just lean into the trust and be open. I think in terms of this week itself, being open to receiving is going to be a lot more difficult than being open to giving. I think the giving comes more naturally. And what we are being challenged with is trusting that other people can, hold the flame for us. I think that energy is something a lot of us are really learning. So try not to go into your shell, try to be a little bit more open. And with those people that you are trusting to share, again, these sacred insights that you have, trust that whatever they offer you is something you can trust. They are offering it to you because they want to. You feel good when you give to others. That comes naturally to you. And so it does for others. And allow you to receive that gift so that they're able to give that gift. And I think we often forget that that's part of the energy is when you close off and you say no to something someone's offering you, it can be hurtful for the person trying to offer, especially if you do a lot for other people and they finally see this window of like, I can finally do something to support you and you shut them down. That can actually be just as painful. So just try to keep that in mind and try to trust that whatever the universe is wanting to offer you right now is because you are worthy of it and because it's something that you may need in order to move into the next phase of where you're going.
This is another relatively quiet period. We have nothing on the 30th or the 1st. The moon will move into Taurus, which will kind of help you lean into some of that softness, that quieter energy. Mercury has kind of a lucky trine with Jupiter early in the morning on the 1st. This energy is going to be great to help you dial up your psychic powers or to open up that heart space and let guides send you helpful signs. They'll help direct you onto your highest path. So keep that in mind. On July 2nd, we have a very busy day. Mercury is going to leap into Leo today, where it's going to be for the next 3 weeks. And it's okay to express yourself with warmth, excitement, and even a little gushing. If you're promoting yourself right now, use storytelling techniques and bold visuals. Let the creativity flow in and above all, have fun. For the next 5.5 months, Neptune is going to be going retrograde in Pisces starting today. When planets go retrograde, we can lapse into past patterns. So stay aware of where your thoughts are drifting off to right now. Now is the time to roll back the fog of denial and really find clarity. Helping you find some of that clarity will be Venus in a productive trine with Saturn. Getting things done will simply feel really good. You may also be rewarded for past efforts, so be open to things flowing in with ease. The moon is going to move into busy Gemini about midday on the 2nd. July 3rd, this is one of those days where it might be easier to focus on the negative rather than the positive. Mercury is going to be forming an opposition with Pluto, and this creates really triggering topics and mental chess moves. Even if you think you see through the muck, the truth might be far more complex than it appears. This energy is good for helping us research what we need to do to grow and evolve. Anything that helps you zoom out and reflect on the source of your blocks will be really well advised during this time frame. And it's interesting because this falls closely to the holidays here in the US. So with the moon in Gemini, I just really encourage everyone to keep curious. The thing about Gemini is that it is willing to change its mind 100 times in 10 seconds. So don't get stuck in the things that feel like you've just uncovered something, because you're definitely not going to get the full story right away. On July 5th, we have 2 days. We get to experience this really lovely sextile, which brings harmony and opportunity between two generally knuckle-busting planets, Mars and Saturn. This energy is fierce for getting things done, thanks to the extra boost it gives us to push ourselves and to focus on what we need to get done to move to the next level of success. So if you're ready to announce something, this could be just the push you're really looking for. Because we've also got some added softness from the Cancer new moon that comes in the evening. This is the year's only Cancer new moon, and it's going to set the stage for some family time. Likewise, if you've poured too much out of your own cup, this moon nudges you to redraw some healthy boundaries. If your mom wants to nurture you during Cancer season, it might be okay to say yeah. A deep decluttering session or soul-soothing house blessing can help you feel supported, safe, and grounded as you continue to reach for the stars. Your home may not feel like exactly where you're aligned, so find ways to bring that comfort and security in really healthy ways.
That is a beautiful way to leave that week. And it actually flows really nicely into the next week, which is July 7th to 13th. And it is the High Priestess, number 2, which is a very feminine card, but a very powerful card. It's one of the major arcana. And it really is all about that intuition. So I think taking that energy of the new moon and realizing what you need and really taking that time to tune into your spirit team, tune into your soul, and feel into what it is you need to nurture yourself. Because sometimes we think too logically, or we don't think logically enough. And we, especially when I feel into the term self care around this, sometimes we think sometimes what we do need is like the bubble baths and the things to make us feel good. But sometimes we need to do our taxes, sometimes you got to split the difference and see what actually is going to move the needle. But particularly with this week, I do think we're leaning more into the watery side of Cancer. We're leaning into that inner intuition and wisdom. And oddly enough, what I have written down here is to lean into practice and ritual. And I think that does really work well with that energy of the new moon and of making home feel good. And so even if you in your physical space don't feel that settled, create some rituals and practices that ground you in the day. And so that you do have that like touch point in order to come back to. And I think sometimes practices and rituals, we think there has to be like a whole song and dance and a whole like hour and a half to it. But it can be as simple as like just closing your eyes and, drinking the first sip of your coffee or tea with mindfulness. It doesn't have to be something that you're like, oh, then I have to put the stuff away again. And, it's like a whole thing. You can make it as much or as little as you want. If you are able to create an altar in this energy, that's what's coming to me right now. It's like creating an altar that you can even just visually see and check in with could be really powerful. But again, just taking the moment, and it's more about the ritual energy of it as opposed to the physical representation of what that looks like. And I think the energy of your spirit team and having that little moment of mindfulness and checking in is going to be really powerful for having those last little nudges and the last little insights that you need to know what is meant for you moving forward. And I think the closer we get to the end of the month, I just feel like that energy of things coming together quickly is going to happen. So the more tuned in you are, you're going to see the synchronicities, you're going to see the signs, you're going to make those connections really fast if you're already in that state. And I think that's where the ritual and the practices are really going to help you be in that state and have that consistency. And again, consistency looks different for everyone. It could be a weekly thing, it could be a daily thing. But I think it just feels like where there's going to be the word whispers came in, where it's like it's going to be whispers. So you're going to really have to be already listening, because spirit, as usual, isn't going to force you into anything usually, unless it's absolutely necessary. It's more about you making those choices. And I think that's why before I was saying like, we're going to have to make choices and decisions this Cancer season. And the more attuned you are and open you are, again, for the flow of abundance, for the flow of ideas, for the flow of intuition. And I think what I just am realizing now is that's mind, body, soul. It's like we have to be in flow with all those things. And so, the energy of abundance is more in the physical sense of like what's coming in to support you. The mental is like the ideas and the conversations and the connections, but then the soul is the other part of that triangle, right? We need to be connected to our own wisdom to know what of those opportunities is going to resonate. And I think that the more you listen, the louder they get, because then spirit knows you're listening, and it just becomes like they don't have to make it as subtle, and they don't have to orchestrate so many things just to get your attention. It'll already be there. It will be very obvious now when you see it. But I am feeling like this high priestess energy is really calling us to lean into the watery energy, that emotional intelligence, and connecting that to your body. And I think that there's going to be some significant shifts that occur once you start doing that. And I think, again, I have this very strong belief that spirit knows when you're open, and spirit knows the signals from you. And when you do a ritual regularly, it's that sign to spirit that you're connected, you're open, and you're going to take what is given to you and receive it and then process that in whatever way you need to. So this does feel like a powerful week for reconnection to your soul.
I got a lot of spirit tingles going on while you're talking, so it's exciting. I think this is going to be a really beautiful week. On the 6th, we have sort of a continuation of Friday's energy of that, like, get things done. But we add in some other players because we have Venus in conflict with the North Node, where self-sabotage could stand in the way of getting what you want. If you're more willing to dive under the surface, the more likely this influence will bring much needed healing or a breakthrough in some way. We also have Venus in a harmonious angle with Uranus. Now, this is a little bit slower moving in some ways. This affects 6th, 7th, and 8th. But it's creating an opportunity to experience something new that brings peace, flow, and good vibes that you may not have even known you needed. How can you shake things up and try something new in order to find more joy? Second up, we have mindful Mercury and abundant Jupiter, encouraging you to share exciting ideas that have the power to expand your life in new ways. If you're ready to announce something, use this optimism to create opportunities. The moon will also be in Leo during this time period, so it's important to lean into that heart-centered energy like Andrea was talking about. This is when you're going to feel closest to connecting to those that are looking out for your highest good in some way. On July 9th, this is a powerful day for karmic messages, ideas, and plans that can help to anchor your highest vision more firmly in your awareness. Mercury and the North Node are in a peaceful and lucky trine early in the morning, paving way for conversations, emails, and divine insights that could possibly bring massive illumination. This is a great day to share wisdom with those that you love or any insights that have brought you clarity. The moon is going to glide into Virgo, so this is an opportunity to get down to business, to mentor, to share those ideas in some way. On the 10th, you can actually get things done without being brusque or abrasive. Today's flowing Sun-Saturn trine happens in water signs and really calls for heart-centered leadership instead of stressing others out and barking orders. This is an opportunity to guide from a place of calm, and demonstrating genuine care for others' concerns is the most potent path to establish yourself as an actual authority figure. This forward-moving energy will help you to stay focused and disciplined on achieving your next level of success. The moon, again, is still in practical Virgo. On the 11th, we have the Sun-Saturn trine continuing today, but we're going to add in some misty-eyed moments as Venus and Neptune also unite under emotional water signs. This compassionate connection can crumble the toughest walls between people, but it can also make it easy to get lost in the daydream version and not necessarily reality. Use this energy to get in tune with deeper emotions and visions that have been hiding just under the surface. Make a vision board to gather up all the daydreams you actually want to manifest. Use this energy to focus on yourself and let the expectations of others fall away as the moon slides into Libra at 10 p.m., bringing in those doubts. On July 12th, during the next 4 days, you may feel more inspired than ever to embrace new possibilities. Jupiter and the North Node are going to be in a harmonious angle, inviting an abundance of ideas around how to make your passion projects happen. Don't feel overwhelmed or like you need to take action on everything. Instead, Write things down, save them for when you need inspiration later. Adding to the breakthrough like energy, Venus and Pluto will be opposing one another, making things tricky. The key is finding a way to compromise somewhere between I just want to feel good in the moment and what is really happening to trigger me at this moment. Venus passionate Leo can overreact to something that can possibly only really need clarity. With the moon in Libra, find ways to bring balance to both sides. And then on the 13th, our last day here, we have the energy continuing with Jupiter in this harmonious angle with the North Node. But today's quarter moon in Libra could make you face the music and deal with the conflicts that you've been avoiding. We're halfway between this year's two eclipses, which are primarily driven by this Libra energy. Where are you avoiding dealing with drama or making a move? Take a deep breath and prepare for potentially unpleasant conversations. Be open to perspectives, stand up for yourself, and be willing to apologize if the fault lies with you.
I feel like this last week, I'm really hoping that this energy shows up in the way that I've been feeling it because I tapped on the last few days, which, like I said, sometimes is a separate energy, but this feels pretty consistent. So from July 14th to the 22nd, I actually pulled the 10 of Pentacles, which is one of the best cards that you can get in terms of, ending a cycle in a positive way. A 10 is usually the last card before the face cards. And in this card, it's showing a family celebration. So it's interesting because Pentacles is an earth sign. So I often feel this in like a Capricorn or earth sign fashion. But the fact that it's so focused on like the family energy in this card, it does feel like that Cancer energy. And with there being a full moon on either side of this in Capricorn, I do feel like that's what this card in particular is about. Again, as Emily knows, I never look up the astrology, but I just know that from her saying that earlier. So I do feel like that's where we're going with this. But particularly, this feels like the energy of like home, family, finances, all those things coming together. And so again, this feeling of home is still traveling with us throughout the month, but this is where it starts to show up in a way where it's like you're in either in your physical home or in your plans for moving forward or whatever it is. It feels like it's finally that sigh of relief, like, oh, this is a possibility. So that energy and that work you do mid-month and throughout the month to really feel into like the confident version of yourself, not leaning into self-sabotage and actually starting to see that things are balancing out. There is some abundance coming. You do have enough. I think that feeling of enough is sometimes like, even if it's like the most simple form of it in terms of like food, or you choose one area to just focus on the fact that you have enough or more than enough, it can actually amplify all of the other things around you that you have an abundance of. And I think the other energy that I love about the description for in this deck for this card is that sometimes you're only one move away from the big thing. And so even if right now we say that, I say this every time, there's always this feeling around like when you hear a big thing like, oh, the 10 of Pentacles, it's all coming together, all the abundance, and you're not quite there. I think the energy is just showing you that that's the trajectory you're on and that you're getting there. And so even if you're not physically feeling like it's showing up yet, the choices you're making, again, choices are really strong coming up this month. And so I think that energy of like it being a halfway through the year checkpoint and having those two Capricorn full moons of like, what are your goals? Where is it you're going? Again, sometimes like I always say I'm party pooper adjacent. I always say that. And that's because I'm very Capricorn and I don't necessarily want to be all fun and games, but I like being in that energy. I like seeing people thrive. I like facilitating that. But I'm always going to be thinking like, do we need to do this? Or like, I get it, have fun, but also, we need enough to move forward. You need to still keep moving forward. You can't really just bask in the fun without still moving. And I think that energy is what's coming up here is like, yes, you're coming to the end of the cycle. It's not going to be as challenging maybe as it has been the last few years, but there's still more to go. And I think the fact that this card actually really beautifully talks about the spiritual and material abundance coming in, and that's where all of the work you're doing energetically is just as important as the work you're doing in terms of like your finances and the physical world. And again, this ties back to that temperance card. We're really being aware this month of like how your choices for your mind, body, and spirit are all connected. So those rituals we came up with, this feels like a little masterclass that Spirit put together for the month of like all of the insights Emily's giving us of like the influences that are going to be there, to be mindful of that and to know what days are really good for putting out your new ideas and really paying attention and highlighting those days that Emily has told you. But then also going with the energy and knowing that like you can keep yourself balanced throughout the month in ways that you maybe aren't normally putting your awareness on. And so this card, bringing in this spiritual and material abundance is like, yes, you can. It's okay to actually enjoy that you're doing well and that things are coming together and that all of the work you're doing is not for nothing. And knowing that there's still more stages to go, but it's okay to celebrate where you are now and to really celebrate with those people around you. Again, this is a card of family and celebration as well. So it's that bookending the month with that energy of connecting with people who feel like home so that you can celebrate this new version of what your life is going to look like. It feels very tangible to me. And I think that that's why it's showing up as a Pentacles card, because the 10 of Cups to me has a similar energy, but that's more emotional. Whereas this has the energy of that community, but in like the way it's showing up and as a reality in your life as well.
I always like to remind people when we have this kind of influence that astrology is happening for us, not to us. And it's easy to say that when the energy is really heavy and you're like, yeah, I'm supposed to be going through these lessons, which I feel like we've been doing consistently. And so now that we have this opportunity for this beautiful energy in, I want to remind you it's the same. It's happening for you. So there's a feeling of like, is it too good to be true? Or I can't believe things are finally clicking forward. To just be an awareness of where your mindset goes and to enjoy these things as they come up. So on the 15th, it's a little bit of an intense energy, but it's going to be driving us to make big changes. The outcome could be more combative or combustible, or it could be really filled with pure genius. We have feisty, action-driven Mars amping up with disruptive Uranus today. So it's best to steer clear of conversational topics while fuses are short. But breakthrough solutions could result if you're willing to get just a little bit uncomfortable. The Sun and Wounded Healer are in conflict today, so be aware of limiting beliefs that arise. It could be a day when you finally are ready to take the leap, but don't be surprised when others are in crazy, anxious moods and maybe trying to talk you out of it in some way. The moon will be in Scorpio, keeping those emotions and trigger points running really close to the surface. Again, that's on July 15th. On the 18th, we have a couple of quiet days. On the 18th, let the sunshine in as the sun and rebellious Uranus again form a harmonious sextile, encouraging you to trust your intuition. Mindful Mercury and Chiron are also volunteering some lucky stardust to float your way by encouraging you to find healing through conversations with friends and healers. This is a great day for meditation and insight downloads. The moon at this point will be in Sagittarius, where you're bound to find some extra zesty reasons to go exploring. On the 19th, are you ready to zoom out in order to fly on a higher frequency? This quiet and peaceful day with Venus and a lucky trine with a North Node is asking you to do just that. If you've been trying to find a way around the rut, through the rut, or past a difficult emotion, today's sky asks you to see the bigger picture and try experiencing your reality from another angle. Our relationship to the North Node reminds us that things are perpetually in a state of flux, where rebalancing is not only necessary, but constant. The moon will move into Capricorn early in the morning, so it's time to start thinking about those goals that you set way back in January yet again. On July 20th, we have passionate Mars leaping into Gemini today. For the next 6 weeks, the world will turn into an open marketplace. Whatever you're selling, it won't take much to convince people right now to buy it. Don't rush into any partnerships without doing the proper research. Monitor your screen time and don't waste your summer scrolling. As entrepreneurs, now's the time to post. Driven Mars also opens up some doors when it pairs up with Neptune, creating powerful 2 days when your imagination, dreams, and connection to source will feel incredibly potent. Ready to reset and make some new goals? Tonight's rare bonus, second full moon in Capricorn, also forms a brilliant trine to Uranus, prompting you to chase those crazy dreams. Speaking of, how are they coming along? Review, revamp, and recalibrate as needed. But before you spin off into a completely new direction, look back at the first full moon just a month ago. Developments that began then could reach their full manifestation now. Capricorn always pushes on, so don't forget to celebrate how far you've come already. On July 21st, if you've been all talk but not so much follow through, it's time to disrupt the patterns. And today's Mercury square Uranus could deliver news that prompts you to change lanes. It's easy to get carried away by the vision, but unless we break it down into actionable steps, it's hard to make any progress. The Sun and spiritual Neptune will also make their once-a-year connection today, urging you to speak your desires into existence. Remember, divine help isn't always wrapped in a shiny miracle. Sometimes it can come from a really unlikely source. Mars is going to be plowing forward into Gemini, making a trine with Pluto today, and now is the time to be proactive and strategic in your thinking. And then finally on the 22nd, we'll have the Sun moving into Leo. So that is our full Cancer season energy report.
I am feeling pretty excited and confident about this month. I feel like usually it just gets kind of like absorbed in like an emotional energy, but I think it's not a coincidence that we have this 10 of Pentacles at the end for the last week. And then we had that full moon energy. And I think the fact that we started with the star a year ago, we started with that energy of hope. It was pulling us through to this point. I think it was really, we didn't realize it at the time. We kept just going month by month, like it's still here. We're still cautiously optimistic, but it was leading us somewhere. And I think sometimes that as humans, that hope energy, that's why it exists. It exists to keep us moving forward. The hope isn't, the point where we actually get everything. The hope is just pointing to what it is that we want. And it's showing that we have a tether to it, that it's a dream of ours because it is meant for us. But we don't unfortunately get to know the entire timeline and everything that's going to unfold. Otherwise, I think we would miss out on half of the gifts of life if we could skip steps. We'd never form relationships. We'd never go through experiences together. We'd never have these things that unite us if we just got to the things that we wanted and, the end point of things. And I think Cancer season with that connection to emotions at home and family is that reminder of like, this is why we're doing what we're doing. We're not doing it to be out on an island. We're doing it because we want the people around us to thrive. And I think that's what the 10 of Pentacles really highlights so well, is that like spiritual and material abundance go together. And I think if you have one without the other, it's going to be stressful. Like, yes, it can be really helpful, again, to have that hope if you're just thriving spiritually, and it can help you when you're not doing so well when it comes to in terms to like abundance and finances and the material things. But it's still a struggle at that point. But when you have both coming together, that is what we dream of as humans, is having enough to thrive as a human, but also as a spirit. And I think this year, this full journey with that energy, I've been seeing 717 a lot this week, and like that 17 energy of the star. I feel like it's this reminder of like, look how far you've come. I saw a rainbow the other day for the first time in person in a long time. And I think it's just that little nod from spirit saying we've been doing the work. And yes, as promised, there is the end of the rainbow. We are getting there, and it may look different for everyone, but as a collective, I think it's just a little point to check in and celebrate before we do some more work for the rest of the year.
It's really going to be fun to see, if you were willing to work with these energies, like what you can manifest between these two Capricorn moons. And you're right. That's the beauty of Cancer season, is the reminder that you can have the abundance and the security, but unless you have someone to share it with, what is the purpose behind it? So why are we striving? Why do we work so hard? Why are we making these goals if it's not to also make a difference in the lives of those that we love? And I always wish that here in the States, and probably you feel this too in Canada a little bit, there's this idea that like Europe goes on holiday for the summer, like they take months, go somewhere and they're gone. And we just don't have that culture here. And I think it's a missed opportunity to treat this halfway point through the year, this pivotal solstice window, with the same reverence that we do around the holidays. because it truly is an opportunity to reconnect with those that we love. And it doesn't have to be about gifts. It doesn't have to be about the financial aspect. It can just be about the gift of time and connection. So, yeah, I think it's going to be great. Do you have anything you want to share coming up in terms of offerings or anything?
Yes, I do. I just want to tie on to that little piece. Something that was showing up for me was how gifts is what shows up in the holiday season, but food is something that is like a symbol of abundance for us. When we have more than enough food to share with one another. I think that's what I was being shown for summer solstice is like how we show it with barbecues and outdoor gatherings and enjoying the season while it's here, but also enjoying the fruits of our labor, if you will, with people who have gardens and more than enough to share. But in terms of this season, for what I have to share, I'm not going to put too much out there right now because I am still processing whatever that Gemini season was. But I will have my newsletter coming out on the 25th. I do want to acknowledge for anyone who has been waiting for the Gemini recharge that it did not happen. You did not miss it. I was incredibly sick for a good chunk of Gemini season. And I just actually took care of myself and said, I'm not going to push through and send anything out in this energy because who knows how that's going to be received. So at some point in the next few months, there will be another surprise that you'll receive. But in the meantime, the Cancer season recharge will be on June 27th and the newsletter will come out the 25th. So you'll have a reminder there when the newsletter comes out that it's coming. But I really do feel like this recharge is going to be a more tangible one. I, for some reason, feel like there's going to be more to feel from it. There's going to be more insights coming through. And I think it's going to help us through a lot of this energy. They always feel like that, but I just feel like this one, it feels like Spirit's trying to give us more insights and help us really harness this solstice season because we have this solstice energy along with these two Capricorn full moons. And the energy every time I feel into it is like, as much as I try to feel into the emotional side, it keeps pulling me into the material realm. So I'm really excited to see what comes from that. But I will leave a few opportunities open for people who want to book card readings or their own energy sessions. But for the most part, I think it's going to be a lot of energy leaning into that recharge.
Love that reminder about the sharing and the abundance of gifts. I think that's beautiful. Also a little bit quieter over here, but I have got a new website that finally is all polished and dusted off and launched just yesterday. So it's exciting. The offerings are similar. I've simplified, streamlined, brought in some new things. So if you haven't been over there, check that out, emilyinnerstars.com. We also have some exciting new podcast episodes coming out behind the scenes. I will be having one here in just a couple of weeks. We're going to be talking to a neuroscience student about what happens in our brains as mediums, the connection to hallucinations and our clairs. So that's an exciting one coming up soon. And there's some others kind of happening behind the scenes. I won't let all the cats out of the bag today. We also have an altar course coming up this week. And I have my newsletter coming out, which is going to announce Spirit Whispers, my mediumship course, which will be launching again in September. And aside from that, I hope to also be enjoying some trees, some barbecue, some outdoor time, and family time coming up soon.
I think that's the perfect way to use our energy in Cancer season. My mom's birthday is in Cancer season, and we all, except my dad, have Cancer placements. We'll all be enjoying that family time. So yeah, I feel like hopefully you get to enjoy that as well. And I feel like those episodes are going to be fascinating. I love a little bit of a secret, so I'm excited to hear what the rest of them that are to come. But I hope that everyone gets to really tune in with their own energy and create some rituals. The altar course feels like it's perfect timing for what's to come this month. And yeah, hopefully you all get to enjoy some summer energy before we see you again in Leo season.
And if you didn't get a chance to download or didn't receive the PDF for Inviting Shadow, please know that it will be available. It's on my Linktree in my Instagram account. You can go right into the links. There's a little button to push and it will send you an email with it instantly. Otherwise, there will be connections, I'm sure, through Andrea too. How can they get it from you?
Yes, for me, it was also going to be a link in my Instagram bio as well as on my website as well. And it'll be in the show notes as well. I think I'm going to put a link there. So, unfortunately, if you're on Apple, you'll have to use one of the other ones. But for the Spotify listeners, you should be able to just click and download.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for listening. We are excited for Cancer season, and we'll see you. I'm sure it'll be about 10 minutes later for Leo season. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.